The email hit my inbox at 9:47 a.m., and just like that, my world imploded. Termination notice, Ethan Waller, the subject line read, cold as a Colorado winter. I was in my cramped Colorado Springs apartment, still nursing a coffee, when the words from Hammond Financial's HR department burned into my retinas. Due to restructuring, your position as junior financial analyst has been eliminated. Clear your desk by noon. No warning, no meeting, just a digital guillotine. 24 hours earlier, I'd stood in Victor Langston's corner office, my heart pounding, and slid a folder of damning evidence across his mahogany desk, spreadsheets screaming fraud, transactions funneled through shell companies, millions, vanishing into the ether. I'd expected shock, maybe anger, but not this. Not betrayal carved out with a corporate knife. I sat there, staring at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. The coffee went cold in my grip. Victor's face flashed in my mind, his forced smile, the way his eyes flicked to that folder, like it was a live grenade. Kessler's a big client, Ethan. Let it go, he'd said, his voice smooth but edged with something I couldn't place. Fear. Guilt. I'd nodded, played the good soldier, but my gut churned. I knew those numbers. Didn't lie. Payments looping through the same 3 accounts, invoices inflated like bad balloon art, vendors with no addresses, no websites. It was a scam, plain as day, and I'd handed Victor the proof. Now I was out on my arse. The shock wasn't just the firing. It was the speed, the precision. One day after I opened my mouth, they erased me. My desk, my login, my 2 years of 60-hour weeks, gone. I felt like I'd been sucker-punched in a bar fight I didn't know I was in. My phone buzzed. A text from a co-worker, Greg. Dude, heard you got canned. What happened? I didn't. Reply. What could I say? That I'd trusted the system? That I thought truth mattered in a place like Hammond Financial, with its polished marble lobby and integrity-first posters? The irony tasted like bile. I wanted to scream, to call Victor and demand answers, but my jaw stayed locked. Betrayal does that. It chokes you, leaves you hollow. I thought of my dad, a mechanic who'd always said, trust your tools, not the suits. He'd been gone 5 years, but his words echoed now, mocking my naivety. I'd believed in Hammond, in Victor's handshake, in the idea that hard work and honesty would protect me. Instead, I was collateral damage in a game I hadn't signed up for. My eyes drifted to my laptop, still open to the email. I could almost hear Victor's voice again, that dismissive, let it go. But I hadn't. I'd saved those files, emailed them to myself before leaving the office yesterday. A quiet act of defiance. Now they sat in my inbox, a digital landmine. Part of me wanted to delete them, to walk away, and pretend I'd never seen the truth. But another part, the part that kept me up at night crunching numbers, knew I couldn't. They'd betrayed me, but I wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't slam doors or curse the sky. I just stood up, walked to the kitchen sink, and scrubbed my coffee mug until my knuckles ached. The hot water stung, but I kept going, like I could wash away the sting of Hammond Financial's betrayal. My apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in, but I stayed quiet, swallowing the chaos inside. The laptop sat on the table, its screen dark now, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. Not yet. My hands moved on autopilot, stacking dishes, folding a stray sweatshirt, wiping down the counter. Each motion was deliberate, a tether to keep me from unraveling. I caught my reflection in the window. Haggard eyes, jaw tight, a guy who looked like he'd just lost a fight. I didn't recognize him. My phone vibrated again. Another text, probably Greg or someone else fishing for gossip. I flipped it face down, ignoring the buzz. Words wouldn't fix this. Nothing could undo the gut punch of being erased from a company I'd poured my life into. I opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, but set it back. Drinking wouldn't help. Instead, I pulled on my running shoes, laced them tight, and headed out, into the crisp Colorado Springs air. The streets were quiet, just the hum of distant traffic and the crunch of my sneakers on gravel. I jogged past strip malls and chain-link fences, my breath steady but my mind a mess. I kept seeing Victor Langston's office, those golf clubs propped in the corner, his expensive watch glinting as he waved me off. I'd trusted him, believed, in the firm's polished reputation. Now I was nothing to them, a line item cut without a second thought. My chest tightened, not from the run, but from the weight of it all. I slowed to a walk, hands on my hips, staring at a faded billboard for a car dealership. "Drive your future," it preached. What a crock. Back home, I dropped onto the couch, the springs creaking under me. My neighbor's TV blared through the thin walls, some game show, canned laughter mocking my silence. I reached for a notepad, scribbling random numbers, old habits kicking in. It was pointless, but it steadied me, like a lifeline to the guy I used to be, the one who thought crunching data could build a future. My eyes flicked to the laptop again. Those files were still there, proof of Kessler's fraud, proof I wasn't crazy. But touching them felt like stepping into a minefield. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the quiet swallow me. No tears, no outbursts, just me alone, wrestling with a wound I couldn't name. My dad's voice crept in, unbidden. Not his warnings about suits this time, but something else. "Keep your head down, but don't lose it." He'd said that when I left for college, his calloused hands gripping my shoulders. I'd lost my place at Hammond, but I hadn't lost myself. Not yet. I stood, grabbed a glass of water, and drank it slowly, the cold snapping me back. The fight wasn't over. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I couldn't stay still. Not when the truth was still out there waiting. The glass of water sat empty on the table, its condensation pooling like my thoughts, stagnant, heavy. I leaned back on the couch, the weight of Hammond Financial's betrayal still pressing against my ribs. My mind drifted, pulling me back to brighter days when I thought I'd found my place. 2 years ago, I stepped into Hammond's gleaming Colorado Springs office, a 28-year-old kid fresh off a master's degree, my tie too tight and my hopes sky high. The memory stung now, a cruel contrast to the silence swallowing me. Back then, the office buzzed with purpose. I'd sit at my cubicle, hunched over spreadsheets, chasing patterns in numbers like a hunter tracking game. My first week, Victor Langston, all charisma and cufflinks, stopped by my desk. "You're gonna do big things, Ethan," he said, flashing, a grin that could sell sand in a desert. I believed him, soaked up every word. Friday happy hours were my baptism, colleagues clinking beers at a downtown brewery, joking about clients and quotas. I didn't talk much, but I listened, feeling like I belonged. Once, a senior analyst, Carla, tossed me a coaster and said, "Stick around, Waller, you've got grit." That moment glowed, a snapshot of a life I thought I was building. Weekends were quieter, but just as vivid. I'd drive out to Garden of the Gods, the red rocks towering like sentinels, and hike until my legs burned. My dad's old Broncos cap, faded from years of sun, kept the sweat from my eyes. He'd loved those trails, used to tell me stories of his own hikes while we grilled burgers in the backyard. "Find your path, Ethan, but don't rush," he'd say, flipping patties with a spatula. Those words felt like a promise then, a map for a future I could see. Stability, respect, maybe a family someday. Hammond seemed like the first step, a firm with a name that carried weight. But the shine dulled over time. The happy hours thinned out, replaced by late nights alone with my laptop. Carla left for a competitor, her desk cleared overnight. Victor's visits grew rare, his grin swapped for distracted nods. I'd catch him in the elevator, his phone pressed to his ear, muttering about sensitive accounts. The office felt colder, the camaraderie fading like a radio signal dropping. I told myself it was just work, just the grind. But looking back, I saw the cracks, moments when I should have questioned the machine I was part of. Now, sitting in my dim apartment, those memories cut deeper than any knife. The Broncos cap hung on a hook by the door, a relic of a time when I trusted the world to make sense. I'd hiked those trails believing I was carving out a legacy, but Hammond had reduced me to a footnote, discarded the moment I got too close to the truth. My dad's advice echoed hollow now. I hadn't rushed, but I'd still lost my way. The files on my laptop, proof of Kessler's fraud, loomed like a challenge. I couldn't undo the past, but I could decide what came next. The question was whether I had the stomach to fight. The Broncos cap stared at me from its hook, a silent accusation. I stood in my shadowed Colorado Springs apartment, the weight of lost trust pressing harder now, my mind clawing through memories for answers. The question wasn't why Hammond Financial betrayed me. It was how I'd missed the signs. Months. Before I got canned, red flags waved in plain sight. But I'd turned away, too focused on playing by the rules to see the game was rigged. It started small. I'd be deep in data, cross-checking Kessler Group's transactions, when I'd notice gaps. Payments to vendors with names like Peak Solutions or Global Ventures, but no trace online, no LinkedIn, no tax records, just ghosts. I flagged one once, showed it to my coworker Nate over vending machine cokes. Probably just sloppy bookkeeping, he shrugged, popping the tab. I nodded, ignoring the itch in my gut, and went back to my desk. But the itch grew. Kessler's. Accounts were locked down, accessible only to a select crew. When I asked about it, my supervisor, Victor Langston, brushed me off. "Focus on your own workload, Ethan," he said, his tone clipped, eyes darting to his phone. Then there were the late-night calls. I'd stay past closing, the office empty except for Victor's corner suite, its light spilling under the door. Muffled words drifted out, phrases like, "Keep it clean" or "No one's digging." Once I caught him pacing, his Bluetooth headset glowing blue, his voice low but urgent. "It's handled, trust me." I froze, pretending to fiddle with the copier, my pulse quickening. He didn't see me, but the air felt charged, like I'd stumbled too close to a live wire. I told myself it was none of my business, just corporate stress. But the memory lodged like a splinter. Meetings shifted too. Kessler's portfolio reviews moved behind closed doors. No junior analysts allowed. I'd pass the conference room, catching glimpses of Victor and the CFO, Leonard Hammond, heads bent over laptops, their faces grim. Once a new guy, Owen, whispered to me at the water cooler, "Ever wonder what's so special about Kessler?" I laughed it off, but his question stuck. Owen was gone a month later, his cubicle stripped bare, rumors swirling he'd asked too much. I didn't connect the dots then, just kept my head down, grinding through numbers like a good cog. In the machine. Now in my apartment's dim glow, those moments burned. I'd been blind, lulled by routine, by the need to fit in. My dad's voice surfaced again, different this time, from a day we'd fixed his truck together. "Watch the small stuff, Ethan. That's where the trouble hides." I'd ignored. The small stuff, and it cost me. The files on my laptop, proof of Kessler's fraud, weren't just data now. They were a map of my failure to see. I paced, the floor creaking under my boots, my fists clenched. I'd missed the warnings, but I wasn't blind anymore. Those signs pointed to something bigger, something I couldn't ignore. I didn't know how to fight it yet, but standing still wasn't an option. Not when I'd already paid the price for looking away. My boots stopped pacing, the creak of the floor fading into a heavy stillness. I stood in my Colorado Springs apartment, the sting of missed warnings now a fire in my veins. I wasn't blind anymore, and I wouldn't be a pawn in Hammond Financial's dirty game. The files on my laptop, proof of Kessler Group's fraud, weren't just evidence, they were my weapon. I wasn't sure how to wield it, but I knew I had to move and move smart. No reckless outbursts, no charging in blind. I needed a plan, and I needed it now. I sat at my kitchen table, the surface scarred from years of use, and opened my laptop with deliberate calm. First, I secured the files. I zipped them into an encrypted folder, uploaded it to a cloud drive, with a password only I knew, and backed it up on a thumb drive I stashed in a lockbox under my bed. Every click was measured, like loading a rifle. If Hammond came for me, they'd find nothing. Next, I pulled up my email, scrolling for a name I'd nearly forgotten, Nora Caldwell, a compliance officer I'd met once at a company training. She'd struck me as sharp, unyielding, the kind who'd sniff out a lie at 50 paces. "Good work catching that error, Ethan," she'd said over a styrofoam cup of coffee, handing me her card. I found it in my wallet, creased but legible, and typed a message. "Nora, I've got something you need to see. Can we meet?" Sending that email felt like crossing a line, but I didn't hesitate. I stood, grabbed a protein bar from the pantry and chewed it slowly, the cardboard taste grounding me. My next move was riskier. I needed to know if I was alone in this. I remembered Owen, the analyst who'd vanished after asking about Kessler. I searched LinkedIn, found his profile, now at a tech firm in Denver. I sent a private message, vague, but pointed. "Hey Owen, remember Kessler? Got a minute to talk?" If he'd seen what I had, he might be an ally. If not, I'd know to watch my back. I glanced at my phone, its screen blank. No one from Hammond had called, not even Victor. Langston with his oily charm. That silence was a warning. They thought they'd buried me. I opened a notebook, jotting down every detail I could recall, dates of Kessler's transactions, Victor's cryptic phone calls, the CFO's closed-door meetings. My pen moved fast, carving order from chaos. This wasn't just for me, it was for whoever Nora brought in, someone with the power to crack this open. My dad's voice slipped into my head, from a night we'd watched a Rockies game on TV. "Plan your play, Ethan, then swing hard." I was planning now, every step a brick in a wall against Hammond's lies. The fire in me wasn't rage, it was focus, cold and unyielding. I didn't know if Nora would respond or if Owen would bite, but I was done waiting for permission. The truth was mine to protect, and I'd fight for it, quiet but relentless, until the whole house of cards came down. The lockbox under my bed held my secrets, but the truth was about to break free. I sat at my scarred kitchen table in Colorado Springs, my resolve hardening like steel in a forge. I'd set my plan in motion, files secured, Nora contacted, Owen messaged, but I hadn't expected the conspiracy to dwarf my worst fears. My laptop hummed, a faint glow in the dark as I waited for Nora's response. When my phone lit up at 11:43 p.m., her text was blunt. "Meet me, midnight, my place, bring everything." My pulse kicked into overdrive, but I grabbed my jacket, the thumb drive, and headed out, the night air sharp against my skin. Nora's apartment was a fortress of files, cabinets lining the walls like sentries. She opened the door, her face taut, and waved me to a cluttered desk. "Show me," she said, her voice low, eyes scanning me like a lie detector. I plugged in the drive, pulling up my spreadsheets, Kessler Group's fake vendors, looped payments, millions siphoned off. She leaned in, her brow furrowing, then handed me a USB of her own. "Look at this," she said, her tone grim. I opened it and my stomach dropped. Folders labeled by year, stretching back a decade, revealed not just Kessler, but 3 other client groups running identical scams. Bank records, wire transfers, offshore accounts, all tied to Hammond Financial's top brass, including CEO Leonard Hammond himself. The scale hit me like a freight train. "This is bigger than I thought," I muttered, scrolling through emails between Leonard and a Kessler exec, coded but damning. "It's a machine," Nora said, her voice cutting through. "They've been laundering money for years, using our firm as a front." My hands froze on the keyboard. I'd worked for these people, trusted their polished mission statements, while they ran a criminal empire under my nose. My jaw clenched, a cold fury rising, not loud, but deep, like a storm gathering strength. I saw Leonard's face in my mind, his tailored suits and charity gala smiles now a mask for a crook. Nora pulled up a final file, a whistleblower's report from 5 years ago, buried by the SEC. The analyst, someone named Claire, had flagged Kessler's patterns and died in a hit-and-run days later. "Coincidence?" Nora asked, her eyes locked on mine. My throat tightened. I wasn't just fighting fraud. I was up against people who'd kill to stay hidden. My dad's words flickered, from a day we'd fished at Pike's Peak. "Truth's a heavy load, Ethan. Carry it careful." I'd carried it this far, but now it felt like a boulder. I leaned back, the chair creaking, my mind racing. Nora's evidence wasn't just a smoking gun. It was a warhead. Every transaction I'd flagged was a thread in a web spanning continents. I wanted to smash the desk, to roar at the injustice, but I stayed still, my fists tight. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about stopping a beast that chewed up lives. Nora watched me waiting. "We need someone bigger than us," she said. I nodded, knowing what came next. The FBI. The truth was out, and I was all in, no matter the cost. The truth was a live wire in my hands, buzzing with danger, but I wasn't backing down. Nora's apartment, thick with the scent of old paper, faded behind me as I drove through Colorado Springs' pre-dawn streets, her words, "Someone bigger than us," burning in my skull. I'd seen the beast Hammond Financial was hiding, a money-laundering empire shielded by Leonard Hammond himself. Now it was time to turn their arrogance against them. I wasn't just fighting for me. I was setting a trap to drag their lies into the open. Back in my apartment, I moved like a man on a mission. I copied Nora's files onto a new drive, labeling it tax records to throw off prying eyes, and hid it in a cereal box in my pantry. My heart thudded, but my hands were steady. Nora had given me a name, Fiona Kessler, an FBI agent who ate corporate fraud for breakfast. I found her contact in an encrypted email Nora sent and drafted a message. "Agent Kessler, I have evidence of major financial crimes at Hammond Financial. Can we meet?" I hit send, then leaned against the counter, the hum of my fridge filling. The silence. This was no turning back. To bait the trap, I needed Hammond to think I'd folded. I logged into my old work email, still active for some reason, and sent Victor Langston a carefully worded note. "I'm moving on. No hard feelings." My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to call him out, but I stayed cool. Let him think I was beaten, licking my wounds. Meanwhile, I reached out to Owen again, the analyst who'd vanished after sniffing around Kessler. His reply came fast. "I saw it too. Meet me at Union Station, Denver tomorrow." I booked a bus ticket, keeping my plans offline, my paranoia. Now a survival tool. I packed a go bag, essentials, cash, the drive, stashing it under my couch. My dad's voice crept in, from a hunting trip when I was 16. "Patience, Ethan, let the deer come to you." I was the hunter now, waiting for Hammond to slip. Nora and I met again at a dive bar, its jukebox blaring Springsteen. "Fiona's in," she whispered over a basket of fries. "She wants everything, your files, mine, and you on record." I nodded, my gut twisting. Going on record meant exposure, maybe danger. But Claire's hit and run haunted me. I wouldn't end up like her. Fiona's office was our next stop, a nondescript building downtown. She was all business, her handshake firm, her eyes like a hawk's. "Walk me through it," she said, pen poised. I laid out the scheme. Fake accounts, offshore transfers, Leonard's fingerprints everywhere. My voice steady despite the storm inside. Nora backed me up, her files a battering ram. Fiona's nod was curt. "This checks out. Stay low. We'll move soon." I left, my chest tight with a mix of dread and thrill. The trap was set, Hammond's confidence our bait. They'd never see the FBI coming. I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a shop window, hardened, focused, not the kid who'd trusted Hammond's lies. I was all in, betting everything on justice. The game was on and I was ready to watch it burn. The game was rigged, but I'd flipped the board. Parked across from Hammond Financial's glass fortress in Colorado Springs, I watched from Fiona. Kessler's unmarked SUV, my breath fogging the window. The trap was sprung. My files, Nora's evidence, Owen's testimony, all funneled to the FBI. My chest hummed with a tight coil of anticipation, the weight of Hammond's lies about to crash. I'd played my part, stayed low, and now the law was closing in like a noose on Leonard Hammond's empire. Dawn broke, grey and sharp, as federal agents swarmed the building. Black vests, clipped commands, radios crackling. They moved like wolves, sealing exits, herding employees to the sidewalk. I gripped the armrest, my knuckles white, as Victor Langston emerged, flanked by two agents. His tailored jacket hung loose, his face a mask of panic, no trace of the slick confidence I'd once envied. "He's talking already," Fiona said, her voice flat, eyes fixed on the scene. I didn't reply, my gaze locked on Victor, his head bowed as he was guided to a van. Justice felt cold, not sweet. Across town, another team hit Leonard Hammond's mansion. I pictured it, his oak-paneled study, papers shredded in haste, his wife's designer heels clicking in confusion. Fiona's radio buzzed. "Hammond's in custody, evidence secured." My jaw tightened. The man who'd built a criminal machine behind a CEO's smile was done. On the sidewalk, Hammond's staff milled, some clutching briefcases, others tapping phones, their faces pale under the morning chill. A news van pulled up, camera lights flaring, catching a secretary's stunned tears. My mind flickered to a moment with my dad, working on his old Chevy in the garage. "Right always catches up, Ethan, but it's messy," he'd said, wrench in hand. Messy was right. The FBI's raid wasn't just arrests, it was a wrecking ball, smashing Hammond's facade. Owen's files, delivered at Union Station, had sealed the deal, altered ledgers, voice recordings of Leonard greenlighting deals, Nora's evidence, my numbers. They'd built an airtight case. Yet, as I watched, a hollow ache gnawed at me. I'd wanted truth, not chaos, but chaos was the price. Fiona shifted, her badge glinting. "Your testimony's next, Ethan. It'll be rough." I nodded, my throat dry. Going public meant torching my career's remains, painting a target on my back. Claire's hit and run ghosted through my thoughts, not just a warning, but a debt I owed her. I'd started this and I'd see it through no matter the cost. The van with Victor pulled away, its tires crunching gravel, and for a second I felt exposed, like Leonard's reach could still find me. A crowd grew, reporters, gawkers, a guy, in a diner apron snapping photos. The news would break soon. Colorado firm busted in fraud scandal. My name wasn't out yet, but it would be. I leaned back, the SUV's leather creaking, my pulse steady but heavy. This wasn't victory, it was consequence. Hammond's empire was crumbling, and I'd lit the fuse. The fight wasn't over, but for now, I watched the pieces fall, knowing I'd traded safety for something harder, truer. The world would know, and I'd carry the weight. The dust of Hammond Financial's collapse settled, but I felt no triumph, only a raw edge in my gut. Driving away from the raid, Fiona's SUV now a memory, I navigated Colorado Springs' quiet streets, the city's pulse indifferent to my war. The FBI had torn Leonard Hammond's empire apart, Victor in cuffs, the CEO's mansion gutted, but I wasn't free. My role as whistleblower, still unnamed in the headlines, chained me to the wreckage. I needed to cut ties, to walk away, clean before the fallout swallowed me whole. In my apartment, the air was stale, heavy with the ghosts of my old life. I sat on the couch, its frayed fabric rough under my palms, and checked my phone. A voicemail from Victor waited, his voice thin, desperate. "Ethan, let's talk. We can fix this." I deleted it mid-sentence, my thumb steady, my chest hollow. Fix what? His betrayal, the lies I'd helped expose? I leaned forward, elbows on knees, and saw my dad's face from a day we'd split firewood in his backyard. "Some bridges burn for a reason, Ethan," he'd said, axe in hand. I was burning mine now, no looking back. I called Nora, my voice, low against the hum of a distant lawnmower. "It's done," I said, the words final, like a door slamming shut. "You don't need to check in anymore." She paused, then replied, "You sure?" Her tone carried a weight, shared risk, shared victory, but I didn't waver. "Yeah, take care, Nora." I hung up, the silence louder than before. We'd fought the same fight, but our paths split here. I didn't need allies now. I needed distance, a clean break from the tangle of Hammond's ruin. My inbox blinked with a message from an old colleague, Sarah, fishing for details. "Ethan, is it true you blew the whistle?" I archived it unanswered. The world could speculate, but I owed no one my story. I stood, crossed to the window, and watched kids on bikes race down the street, their laughter sharp against my mood. I'd exposed the truth, but it came at a cost. My name, my peace, now tied to a scandal that'd haunt me. Claire's fate, that hit and run, lingered like a shadow. I wouldn't let Hammond's reach pull me under, not after coming this far. Grabbed a duffel, tossing in clothes, a toothbrush, my dad's old pocket knife, a relic of simpler days. The files, the fight, the firm, they were behind me. I locked the apartment, the click echoing, and drove to a motel on the city's edge, its neon sign flickering vacancy. Checking in, I paid cash, gave a fake name. Not fear, but caution. Hammond's claws were clipped, but men like Leonard had long memories. I'd face the FBI's questions, testify if needed, But I was done with Colorado Springs, done with the man who'd trusted too easily. Standing in the motel's dim lot, I exhaled, the night cool against my face. The stars were faint, drowned by city lights, but I felt lighter, unmoored. I'd severed the ropes, Victor's pleas, Nora's bond, the firm's shadow. My dad's words rang true. Some bridges had to burn. I was free, not whole, but ready to walk away, carrying only what mattered, the truth and myself. The motel's neon buzzed behind me, a fading echo as I drove north, Colorado Springs shrinking in my rear view. I'd severed the ropes tying me to Hammond Financial's wreckage, but the scars of their betrayal carved deep. Now 6 months later, I stood on the porch of a modest cabin in Montana, the Bitterroot Mountains looming like quiet giants. I'd rebuilt, not with fanfare, but with grit, carving a life from silence and truth. The fight wasn't over, but I'd found ground to stand on, a place to breathe. I landed a job at a small Missoula firm, crunching numbers for local businesses. My boss, Clara Thornton, a no-nonsense woman with a handshake like iron, saw my worth. "You don't miss a thing, Ethan," she said, tossing me a client file my first week. I nodded, the praise settling like dust after a storm. The work was steady, honest, no hidden accounts, no locked doors. My cabin, bought with whistleblower, reward money, sat on a wooded lot, its cedar walls smelling of new beginnings. I'd plant a garden come spring, maybe get a dog, something to share the quiet with. Mornings I'd sit on the porch, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug, the air crisp with pine. The SEC's check, 7 figures, a cut of Hammond's penalties, sat in a savings account, untouched but for the cabin. It wasn't about money, it was about choices. I'd chosen to testify, to face the FBI's questions, to let my name hit the news. Whistleblower crushes Colorado fraud. The headlines faded, but the weight lingered. I kept a burner phone, checked my locks twice, a habit born from Claire's, Shadow and Leonard's long reach. One evening, a new hire, Liam Carver, cornered me at the office. "Hey, you're the guy, right? The one who took down that firm?" His eyes gleamed, hungry for heroics. I leaned back, my chair squeaking. "Just did my job," I said, but he pressed. So I told him, "Numbers don't lie, but people do." He scribbled notes like I was some sage. My dad's voice slipped in from a night we'd camped under stars. "Live true, Ethan, that's enough." I was trying, but true wasn't perfect. It was raw, uneven, like the gravel path to my cabin. I'd left Nora behind, Victor's voice erased, Hammond's empire ash. The cost was high, trust shattered, a career scarred. But I'd gained something harder, clarity. I wasn't the kid who'd walked into Hammond blind. I was Ethan Waller, 30, a man who'd faced a machine and walked away whole. The mountains stood watch, their silence my own. I didn't need applause, just this: coffee, work, a patch of earth to call mine. Betrayal forges you, strips you to bone, but it also shows you what holds. What would you do if you found the truth buried in lies? Would you fight, risk everything, or turn away? I chose to stand, to rebuild from the rubble. Tell me, when the moment comes, what will you choose?